and charges were brought against the steward that he was wasting the master's goods. Hold thou me, Lord, that I may uplift thee. Amen. So once upon a time, a steward, a sort of manager type with power over his master's household and money, was turned in for wasting his master's goods. A fraud of some kind had been perpetrated, and the master called in the steward and warned him that an audit was about to commence. Well, this was in the days before paper shredders, and that steward knew there was no way he could cover his tracks. When he realized that his misdeeds would soon be fully brought to light, and moreover, that he would surely soon be fired from his job as a result, he made a bold move. The steward called in all the people who owed his master money, and he cooked the books to make it appear as if those debtors owed less than they did. You owe my master for $100 worth of flour? Quick, let's change that and make it say that you only owe him $50. Why does the steward do this? Because he figures when the master inevitably fires him from his job, as he surely will, he'll now have lots of people who owe him favors for the gift of altering the master's accounts and making it appear that they owe his master less than they do. They will take me into their homes and they will care for me, the steward reasons, on account of having saved them from having to pay back a lot of money to the master. Well, the story's ending seems inevitable. If the master was angry at the steward at the beginning of the story for wasting his goods, he is sure to go ballistic when he learns that the steward has perpetrated this additional fraud. And so the story says, on the day of his appointment with the steward to audit the company books, the master, seeing the double fraud that had been committed against him by his lying and cheating employee, that master, knowing full well how the steward must first intentionally and with reckless abandon have wasted his goods, and then second, with malice aforethought and larceny in his heart, did abuse his office and commit yet another crime. That master, with fire in his belly and lightning in his eyes, summons himself to his full height, and he points his finger to the face of that dishonest steward, and he looks him right in the eyes, and he says, "Good job, friend. I like the way you roll." The master commended the dishonest steward for his shrewdness. If we take this story at its face, we are left with a puzzle. Is Jesus really commending the actions of the dishonest steward? Is Jesus telling us that if we intentionally break the 8th commandment, that's the one about stealing, and the 9th commandment, that's the one about not lying, and probably the 10th commandment, that's about the not coveting your neighbor's stuff, that we'll be rewarded in life? Is Jesus exhorting us to take up a life of crime? Well, the key to understanding this story is to remember that so often the characters in Jesus' parables stand in for some other person in life. Jesus may tell a tale about a bunch of stonemasons who throw out a rock because they don't like the look of it for a building. But when the Pharisees hear that story, they know that they're the masons and that Jesus is the rock. Similarly, in this story, it doesn't take a Bible scholar to see that the master who has all this wealth and owns all these goods is God, our Creator. And that the steward, into whose care is entrusted all of this wealth, is you and me. The master isn't going to get mad and fire the shrewd steward at the end of this morning's story because the master is our loving Creator. And what the Creator wants from us is precisely that we share generously with those around us from all that the Creator has entrusted to our care. For the next many weeks, our gospel readings will include some of Jesus' key teachings about money and wealth. It is said that more of Christ's words are devoted to teaching about money than any other single topic. And I think if we reflect on that for a minute, it makes a lot of sense. Money and wealth give us power. And if we use our power faithfully and wisely, God is pleased and our lives are enriched in surprising and wonderful ways. And if, on the other hand, we use the power of wealth and money unwisely, our money and our stuff become impediments to right relationship with God and to living faithfully. Today's story reminds us of a couple of basic truths about money and wealth. We're reminded that all that we have comes from God, the Master, the Creator, who really owns it all. We're reminded that we, too, are stewards, entrusted to care rightly for God's riches. We're reminded that it's pleasing to God when we are generous with that which is given into our care. That making friends with money makes God happy. And finally, as Jesus says a little later in this morning's reading from Luke, we cannot serve both God and money. Money is powerful enough, Jesus teaches, that we are either going to serve with it or we are going to be its servants. Our choice is to be hoarders or helpers. It is either one or the other. You cannot be both selfish and generous. You cannot constantly look out for number one and love your enemies. You cannot be Bill Gates and Mother Teresa. We can't serve both God and money. I was thinking this week about folks in my daily life who seem to be examples of the shrewd steward in this morning's story. Who do I know that exemplifies a way of living that's like what Jesus encourages this morning? I can't tap one person who feels like a perfect embodiment of these teachings. But as I look at the lives of several friends and colleagues, I see these wonderful ideas unfolding in different ways. I know a woman who says yes to every single request that she gets from a charity or a person in need. All those envelopes that come in the mail every single week. She figures, she says, that God puts folks in front of her for a reason. And she takes seriously Christ's commandment to give to everyone who asks. She says, some months there's not much left in the checking account on the 30th, but we always make it. I know a couple who love to entertain, to gather friends from the various orbits of their life around the dinner table and to encourage feasting and deep conversation across all kinds of unusual boundaries. They make sacrifices in other areas of their life so that they have resources to throw these great parties, and dinner at their house is always such a treat. What a wonderful way to share. I know a number of people who are demanding of their money managers that their cash never be invested in companies that exploit their workers or manufacture weapons of war or intentionally and recklessly pollute the environment. That is faithful stewardship, which will undoubtedly come at the cost of lesser returns from mammon, but will yield far greater rewards for being faithful to God. I'll bet that if you think about it, you can imagine people in your lives who live in similar and faithful ways. I'll bet if you think about it, you can think of ways that you're already doing these things in your own lives. We're all very different. To some is entrusted the responsibility for managing substantial wealth. For others, we've got a lot less to worry about. But the story of the steward this morning is really for us all. Make friends with your money, is what Jesus says. And if you're hoping this morning that this story is some kind of one-off that we don't have to worry about too much, well, you're probably out of luck. This notion is really central to faithful discipleship. Jesus speaks of the importance of being generous with our worldly wealth and living sacrificially in dozens of different ways in the gospel accounts of his life. In simple declarative laws like, let him who has 2 coats give one away, or give to everyone who asks. In obvious morality tales like that of the Good Samaritan who lovingly and extravagantly cares for the wounded stranger, or the tale of the rich man and Lazarus who go to hell and heaven respectively on account of how they shared and did not share their wealth. And in the mystical teachings of layered meaning and eternal consequence like, when I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. Money and wealth give us real power in this life. If we use that power wisely and faithfully, God is pleased and our lives will be enriched in surprising and wonderful ways. If, on the other hand, we use the power of wealth unwisely, our money and our stuff become impediments to right relationship with God and to faithful living. Beloved, make friends with your money, so that on the day you are called to account for how you shared of what was given you in this life, you might hear these words: good job, friend. I like the way you roll. Amen.